Welcome to the Outstanding Women Leaders bonus episode with Christina and Knittle. We are here to talk all about how we have these synergies in our lives.
Yay.
So if you have not tuned in to hear her story, you should. She is a PR leader, and she's paving the way for women in the workforce that want to leave, raise a child, and come back. And on our bonus episode, we're going to talk about how she is a 5-1 manifesting generator. And also we have a lot of synergies, including that the birth date that I wrote down that she gave me happens to be an aunt that lives in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So random. And also how we met, we were kicked out from each other 3 times. I forgot about that until just now. It's like the universe, we wanted to be connected universally. And then there was tech that did not want us to be connected, which is even funnier because you got your start in tech.
Yes. No, it was tech, but it also, Katie, it was, I was also getting told no, but I kept asking.
Yeah, I love that. So you know that a no is not a rejection. You know that a no really is a redirection. Your redirection was to go right back and ask again. And on the main episode, we talk all about how you get better at asking. And Christina will tell you, you just ask. You just keep doing it.
Yep, just ask.
So share for us a little bit. I want to talk about the Chicago connection we have, because you can see it in your background if you're tuned in and watching the video.
My Chicago Tribune.
Yeah. And the only reason I know this about you is because I saw it in the background and I had to ask. And tell me how that all works out for us.
So I grew up in Kalamazoo, which is equidistant between Chicago and Detroit. And so to go to a big city growing up in Kalamazoo, it was either Chicago or Detroit. After I moved to San Francisco, my mother and my younger sister moved to Chicago and lived near Wrigleyville, I think Wrigleyville area. They lived there for a while. And so my sister graduated from Lane Tech. And even before, so a few months before she graduated, she moved out. I mean, she was 18, but she decided she wanted to move out from my mom's place. And so this was her whole senior year. She was an independent child, or she was treated as an adult, so she worked. And so she worked, I don't know how many hours a week she worked, but she supported herself. She was on this high school softball team. And so and she would go, and my sister's got so much of like my influence on her that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's kind of what I would do if I were her too. But so she would represent herself at the parent-teacher conferences because she was by herself. And so one of her teachers had said, look, she was a photojournalist, I believe, one of her teachers were. And so I worked in PR. And so she said she wanted to do a story about just kind of her last year of high school, just as a story about kind of coming of age. And I had connected her with a reporter. And so anyway, it ended up being this large spread in the Labor Day issue of the Chicago Tribune, Labor Day Sunday, or the weekend edition. And so it was this big spread. And so it was about my sister. And so it talks about, so there's some pictures of my family in there. And it was about a coming of age. And so the headline was a rebel turns responsible. And so basically this rebellious daughter basically is responsible, and it shows her pictures at work, and shows her walking to and from work, and it was actually of the time, I mean, this is, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. It was very telling, I guess, of that generation, that I want to be independent, I want to do my things so
and
anyway,
what year did that come out? I'm curious.
If you don't mind, I'll just look real fast.
Sure, go right ahead.
– 2005.
Okay, so all the synergy. So 2005 is when I graduated college and moved. Wow. And that's how I landed at Gordon Tech, which is right down the street from Lane Tech. And I know several people now that work there. I love the rebel turns responsible. I feel like that might just sum up a little bit of my life too.
Yeah, and I think that that's, the reporter and the photojournalist felt like that too, because I don't know, to me, it was like, oh, that's just her.
Isn't that just everyone? Aren't we all
But it is,
secretly
yeah,
rebelling? And
yeah.
yeah, but she was much more responsible at a younger age. So what a fun little synergy we had on our the first time we ever met. And then the synergies just kept continuing. And so for 5-1 human design, you went the English major route, I went the history major route. I didn't like all the rules for English.
Yeah, there are a lot of rules. There are a lot of rules. I don't like, because my parents, their English is both their second languages. It came easily to me because I like learned the rules and came back and taught, you know,
Yeah. And that
taught
the
it to my
5-1
child.
is a natural teacher, which is why that makes us natural leaders because we learn, we teach others, and then we lead by
Mhm.
example. I always said that I would do what you do if I had the right influence. My mom just said I would be a teacher. Before my grandfather died, he asked me what I would do. I was 16. And mom answered for me because I was like, I don't know.
Your mom answered for you. Lovely.
She did. She did. And, it's funny because she said, well, you're always teaching your stuffed animals. This is what she said to my grandfather. She's always been teaching. I think she'll become a teacher. And I also had a club when I was 12 and I charged yearly dues and monthly membership fees. Why didn't mom say entrepreneur?
You know what? Mothers gravitate toward what they would like to see their kids doing. Because my mother would say, you should be a lawyer. If you were asked, if my mom were to answer my grandfather in that same situation, she'd say lawyer. But that's not me. That's not me at all. I mean, there are there are some similarities between PR and lawyer, but it's, mm-mm.
Yeah. And in my history classes, I was smarter than the lawyer pre-law people. And I was also told that I should be a lawyer. I just enjoy it. Yeah. I'm like, well, if I'm a lawyer, then I won't be as smarter than them. I'll be them. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
we also have, let's see, some more synergies that we have that just keep coming up. Tell me all about living in Tahoe. I have not been to Tahoe, but my man wants to move there and retire there.
Really.
And so I didn't meet him in Tahoe. I met him on a street in Hoboken, which, feels the same.
What were you doing? I'm always a believer that you're going to find your match doing something that you both enjoy doing.
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
So you
and
guys were skiing.
we're skiing.
And
Yeah.
then
So,
how do you ski into each other?
well, so yeah, it's I don't know. It was the last run, and I was with a bunch of or a bunch of my colleagues, and he was with his friends, and it's just, the flirtation, like there. It was his friends flirting with my friends, and we were just kind of like wing people. And at the end it was, the après ski. Hey, let's go to après ski at the end of the run, because we did the last run. But if you're a skier, like the hardcore people do last run. It's just kind of what it is. You're fair weather if you just kind of do half day, but like the really hardcore people do last run. So we were one of the few people who did last run, and then we do après ski. And then that's how I met him, was during après ski, because his buddies and my buddies were, they were like, hey, let's hang out. And so that's how I met him. And he was a school teacher.
What subject? What grade?
He was a high school special ed teacher.
Hmm.
So all grades, but special ed was his focus, and when he went to school. So I thought, well, if he is a high school special ed teacher, he's going to have a lot of patience with me and others.
That is like a way I would think as well. And I always say that Dan has, he always tells me that I'm so patient with him. And I always think, we see in each other what we see in ourselves. Like he's also very patient with me until he's not. And then I'm like, well, you just have to tell me I have ADHD. I don't know. I'm not, like, if you want those dishes done today, you're gonna have to say something because my brain is focused on where does this fit in my schedule? I'm also an only
Yep.
child. Is your husband an only child?
No, he's not. He's got a younger brother, or I'm sorry, a, I'm so used to saying that he's got two younger sisters.
Yes, you have the younger brother. And where do you
Yes.
fall in the line with your family?
I'm the middle. So I've got a brother, sister, me, brother, sister. So 3 girls, 2 boys, but it's so weird. Like brother, sister, brother, sister, brother,
Yeah,
sister. I don't know.
that's a
I don't know how my
50-50
parents
shot. They're
decide
a
that.
walking math problem right there.
I know, statistically speaking, that's pretty rare, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are 5 of us. I'm the right in the middle. I mean, cement blocked in the middle.
So something you said in our podcast that I feel like your Kentucky roots were showing. And I forget that my mother's mother lived in Kentucky before she moved to Illinois. You made the comment about like the it's not like I fell off the turnip truck. And I was laughing so hard internally. I'm like, this is Kentucky coming out. How has Kentucky influenced you? And because I don't
Well,
feel like that's what we say in Michigan. I'm not from Michigan.
no. Um, Although that was an expression I think I learned when I was in Michigan, but Kentucky, my dad went to high school in Kentucky,
Mm.
and after he moved from so there's Fort Campbell, so there's a military base there, and that's my grandfather. So anyway, long story short, my dad eventually came to the US, and that's where he lived. He came when he was a teenager, so he spent he finished high school in Kentucky, and then he went to Vietnam. That's where he met my mom, and he lived in Vietnam for a number of years as a civilian too, and that's where my older brother and sister were born. Anyway, fast forward, so they came back to Kentucky, and that's where I was born. And so my dad's had friends in Kentucky, and so after we moved to Michigan, we would so my grandparents lived in Tennessee. And so every year we would drive from Michigan to Tennessee to visit my grandparents, but we'd always stop in Kentucky and visit my dad's high school friends. And so we did that for a number of years when I was really young. And so we would go to his class reunions with him too. And that, there it wasn't that was Kentucky. I mean, that was where I was born, and that's where we would visit. We'd spend an extra day in Kentucky going to Tennessee to be with my grandparents. So that's the Kentucky influence. But my dad, if I can do a little brag for him right now, so he just went to Kentucky. So he was part of the state football champs in 1965. So he and his team were just inducted to the it was Hopkinsville, the Hopkinsville Football Hall of Fame. So he was just there about a month and a half ago. So being awarded that. So I was like so proud of him.
Oh, that's such a great. I love that. I know someone else from Hopkinsville that I just recently met too.
Top town. Yeah.
And then the Germany connection I also find fascinating for us. So my next door neighbor, when I moved to Tennessee, they spent 20 years like living in Germany. Her husband was a sergeant. He works
Mm.
for New York for UT. And my great aunt Mary lived in Germany. We have like a lot of German connection with family, a lot of Christmas ornaments and not, tchotchkes. Her husband was stationed in the army there
Yep.
too.
I've got
So
a German flag. A
yeah,
German
you
flag like
do.
that.
And a friend from college that ended up moving there. And I'm like, man, maybe I should have done that before the pandemic. That seemed
It's great if you haven't gone. I'm actually trying to go there this June for a
Ooh.
week, but
So
I've been
well,
there about 4 times.
okay. So then I'll give you my joke that I used to do at the bars in college when some douchebag, pardon my language, would ask me, like, what's your middle name? Like, why did guys play that game when do you remember this? Let me guess your middle name. So I would always tell them it's a land in Germany that many a man have fought over.
I don't, okay. Berlin, Nuremberg, what?
Well, and then my other hint was like, except sometimes the land is in France.
I
All right, you're the English major. So what's funny is that I've spelled my middle name wrong my whole life. Like I've been picking Lorraine is my middle name. So Alsace Lorraine. This was the first area that Hitler took back when he marched.
Oh, how many guys figured that one out?
I think Dan knew it right away. But outside of
That's why
that,
he's with you.
I think only one idiot. Well, I didn't have, but like Dan and I think I'm trying to remember like how our conversation came up. It was more like an organic thing, perhaps. And he was like, he just knew that answer. And then the other guy that knew the answer, was still a waste of time.
Well,
but not very
him.
often, and not very often. And then my bad, because I'm actually not sure if Germany or France has that little sliver of land. I should probably look that up if I'm going to use that joke again.
Well, it's interesting that somebody figured that out. I thought it was a joke, like it was you were trying to like tell them like back off. Like I'm like Nuremberg, none of your business. I don't know. Like I
Oh,
was
I
trying
like where you went with that for the joke. No, mine was really, I was going back to World War II on that one.
okay.
And World War One. Like that was a very, that was the Rhineland. That was the area that was very
Mm,
fertile, all the resources. This was the area of land that France and Germany have fought over for a long time. So there's the history joke for the day. So, but Lorraine, sometimes I would spell it with two R's and one N, and sometimes I would spell it with one R. So when I took back my maiden name when I got divorced, I shortened it to L. So Katie Ellie.
mm,
But my
neat.
grandmother, that's her family's from Germany. Her middle name was Lorraine, which is where it came from.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So fun little facts. As we wrap up our bonus episode, what else do we need to share? You've got such great stories.
Um, I I I don't know. I sometimes find it boring talking about myself. So I like talking about what what you've been got going on.
Everything that I
So
find fascinating about our synergies, right down to me writing down the wrong date that for your human design that happens to
yeah.
be your aunt in Chattanooga, Tennessee, of all places. Um, I very much from the like I definitely thought you were a 5-1 when we first met. I very much feel we find each other 5-1s in life, even if we don't ever know each other's human design. So when I put my college roommate in my human design, she was a 5-1. When I put
Mhm,
my neighbor across the street that I grew up with, she was a 5-1.
mhm.
When like you see the pattern it's going.
Yeah. So are there like anti 5-1s like yin and yang? Like who would like what is the one that's like not
I
5-1
love
so
that
I
you
can
called
avoid
it
those?
anti 5-1. So the other people I tend to hang out with a lot, I collect if I were to look at numbers. So we're very compatible with 2 4s as well. But 6 2, so the sixth line sits right above the fifth line, and the two line sits right above, or the two sits right above the one. They will either ruin our reputation or be our best friend and sing our praises. And I will say that all the 6 2s I have, that the sixth line is here to educate, the fifth line is here to have solutions. Sometimes the
Mhm.
sixth line just wants to educate us, and we're like, no, 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 we have the solution.
Got it.
So it's actually it's not that the personalities conflict so much, it's all the energy channels, and there's different energies. So I have an app where I can put people in and see like compatibility. So I did the compatibility for Dan, who's a 3-5. We're like 93% compatible. I've done it
Nice.
for some friends. Like, so everyone I've put in this app that I'm really good, close with, we are all in the 90s or above. My best friend from high school, the one that it's like it's not a miracle that we've been friends, but there were moments where you could say, oh, it's a miracle. It'll take a miracle, like from the movie. We are 90%. And what's interesting is that the few people that I just thought, let me throw them in here. It's not that we don't get along. It's just that like they're not my business bestie. Like they're not the person I call. They're
Mhm.
in the high 80s. And that made me realize, all right, so humans are designed to be 90% compatible.
90%. Okay.
Like
Nice.
I need an A. What I decided for myself is I need an A. And I think
A.
that's what happens when we get older, right? Is that
Yeah.
we really are, you know what? I like that person, but I love this person. And
Yeah.
so I want to hang out with the person I love. And then if the person I like is around in a group, okay, but
Yeah.
that's not why I'm here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I read something when I was in college, of all places. I mean, not of all places, but of all stages of my life, I read it in college. We're talking about like timing for things. But I read something about your A list, your B list, your C list. You know, focus all your energy on the A's, a little bit on the B's. Don't even give the C's your time of day. You need to focus on the people who make you feel good, who empower you. Just and it was very enlightening to me because I was at a point where I was probably spending too much time worrying about what so and so thought, but do I really care? Should I care?
Mm.
And so that was like the first step for me to realize that, hey, you have a finite amount of resources, which means your time and your energy. Don't even don't sweat that. Just cut them out. You don't, just don't even. And it was really enlightening. It was really helpful.
Yeah, I think of that from there. Who's your Peter, Barnabas, and Paul? If I was to use a biblical reference, which is the same thing. Well, the way I'm going to spin it is going to be the same thing, which is who's your bestie? Who's your
Hmm.
Peter? Like who's like your Peter? Like who are the people that are influencing you? And then who are you influencing? So for me, if they're I don't do this with people, by the way. I don't do percentages, but I do look at people of who can I pour into? Those are my
Hmm.
B listers. Those are my C listers. Like who's
Hmm.
pouring into me? Those are my A listers.
Yeah.
And because of the line of work I'm in, right? We have so many solutions. Like we can solve so many problems. I don't, I don't want to, this is, I think is how I got just a very small sample size. It was just enough for me to be like, all right, we're not putting everybody in this app. It's like, 6 people, but it was enough for me to see there's a trend there. And like, I
Yeah.
energetically know that. I don't have to put it in an app. I just know it when I think about, or when I listen to my own energy.
Yep. Yep. And then you've got your ride or dies, meaning like I heard that recently, like your ride or die, meaning like hell or high water, doesn't matter anything, they're always going to be with you. And those are my sisters, they're like A plus plus plus. So, they're I always make time for my sisters. So I think, there's a separate maybe category or echelon for family.
Yeah, and as an only child, I think where I've struggled in with our 5-1, so we're designed to interact with strangers. You're literally in the best job ever. I wanted everyone, I wanted people I wanted to be their ride or die too. I would always write in and I was willing to die. I don't have those siblings. Who else am I dying for? And
Yeah.
so recognizing that who's on your ride or die list, you may not be on their ride or die list. And it was a great lesson for me around that too. So knowing like,
Mhm.
yeah, why would you ride into battle for someone that isn't your blood? You have so many.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Regular episode, you can go tune in. You can find Christina Knittle on LinkedIn and you can click the link in here. And thank you, Christina, for tuning in with
Thanks for
us.
having me. It's been fun. Thanks,
Yeah,
Katie.
absolutely.